Good morning and welcome to Reconnect with Jewish National Fund, a live event on Zoom that is more than trees. We are delighted that you have joined us, especially because we know that life in the COVID era has you in front of a screen and in your little Brady Bunch box just a little bit too long and often for everyone's sanity. So we're glad that you took some time out today to spend some more time on screen. Today, you will learn something new for sure, and hopefully will be inspired. You'll be surely feel good that so much amazing stuff is happening in Israel. We hope that will be the case for sure. David and I are honored to be a part of expanding JNF's presence in Richmond. And one of the fun things about it is that we get to work with Sam Richardson, the Director of Small Communities Outreach for JNF. And Sam is here, positioned happily in his Zoom square. So let me introduce you to him. Sam, who has a master's in divinity and a PhD, is a traditional Jewish guy who also happens to be a sociologist. He has been involved in a variety of small Jewish communities across the country, including the states of Colorado, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Virginia. In addition to serving as Director of Small Community Outreach for the Jewish National Fund, Sam's ongoing research seeks to increase the understanding of how small Jewish communities engage in the task of transmitting Jewish values to the next generation, thereby facilitating Jewish continuity and strengthening connections to Israel. Sam, it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that kind introduction.
You're welcome.
I want to share with you all briefly why I love smaller Jewish communities and what distinguishes us from the urban centers. In my research, I found that there are 4 specific characteristics that literally for over 200 years have provided smaller Jewish communities in America with the vitality, resilience, and generational continuity required not only to be present in our day, but that will enable us to play a significant role in the American Jewish scene of the future. I won't give you the entire lecture now, but I want you to know that I believe 100 years from now, it will be our smaller Jewish communities in the US, which will be the backbone of American Jewry. Number 1, we don't rely on exclusively on large institutions or the professional class. By definition, it's our people, our lay leaders, our volunteers, normal moms and dads who form the critical mass of people and who get things done in our communities. And along with that, we reduce outsourcing by increasing our parental responsibility and personal responsibility. By definition, in a smaller community, we're not able to just disappear into the trees as you can in a large city. We all know who we are in a smaller community, and the larger community knows who the Jewish folks are. So when we have our kids in school, when they're on a sports team, or when we're just out in the general community, we are the representatives of what it means to be a Jewish family. And so the responsibility is on us to make that presentation on a regular basis. Third, we clarify and articulate community values separately from the urban centers. We view ourselves as members of this community, and it's amazing when I'm talking to folks from smaller communities, one of the first questions they'll ask me is, "So Sam, are you in New York?" I say, "No, thank God, I am in Central Virginia." And they, "Oh, that's so great. I'm in wherever." And that is our identity of our local smaller Jewish community. And finally, we're not afraid to set and clarify boundaries, which encourage living by these community values. Humans thrive within boundaries. That's one of the reasons why Torah has been so successful for 3,000 years of keeping Am Yisrael together. And as we articulate and clarify our boundaries in our small communities, this keeps our children and our grandchildren Jewish, even when they leave home. We have a much higher retention rate for Jewish children and grandchildren who are raised in smaller communities than those who are raised in cities. So we have a lot of strengths. We have a lot of things to be grateful for and proud of. And I want you to know that Jewish National Fund wants to be the voice, provide you a voice as members of a smaller Jewish community in Israel. And speaking of Israel, since our founding in 1901, Jewish National Fund has a single driving focus that has been to ensure a strong, secure, and prosperous Israel for Jewish people everywhere. And the results do speak for themselves. Together with our partners, we reestablished our ancestral Jewish homeland in modern Israel. We planted more than 250 million trees in what was once a barren desert. And we built hundreds of vibrant, bustling, life-affirming communities throughout Israel. Now, this 3-minute video that you'll see in a moment will give you a taste of the Jewish National Fund vision, firmly rooted in our shared history, that takes us securely into the future, all the while building a land for our people.
It all begins with a vision. Creating a bright and prosperous future for the land and people of Israel is Jewish National Fund's vision. The vision we build upon every day. To create change, you need a vision. A vision of lush and breathtaking forests where once was only rocky and brown land. A vision of transforming the Negev and the Galilee, areas filled with pioneering spirit and determination, but faced with economic challenges. We're helping these areas reach their potential by creating jobs, housing, tourism, and quality of life opportunities, injecting a vitality that is transforming them into places people want to live. A vision for us to speak our values, leaving no one behind. A vision of quenching the thirst of Israel's population and allowing the agricultural economy to thrive by bolstering Israel's water security with reservoirs, drip irrigation, and river rehabilitation. A vision that took Israel to recycling 85% of its water today. A vision that searches for solutions that will make a better tomorrow. From state-of-the-art greenhouses to flourishing pepper and flower farms to high-tech labs that are working on medical breakthroughs. A vision of a continuum that engages at every age, from the time you're born through adulthood and beyond, ensuring that we are raising tomorrow's leaders today. A vision that understands that a nation must know its past to create a stronger future, that the stories of our history are preserved to be retold for generations to come. Since 1901, Jewish National Fund has been guided by a vision of a bright, beautiful future for the land and people of Israel. A vision that Jewish National Fund delivers on year after year. Be a part of our vision. Join us.
Wow, that always helps to get the juices flowing, and it makes me excited about what the possibilities are and how far we've come. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my privilege to introduce to you Rick Krosnick. As Jewish National Fund's Chief Development Officer, Rick directs the national campaign, working with top-level lay leaders and professionals to define campaign goals, develop campaign initiatives, and identify fundraising opportunities in support of the organization's transformative projects in Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Chief Development Officer, Rick Krosnick.
Well, thank you so much, Sam. And Rebecca and David, thank you so much for hosting us virtually. Again, looking forward to being in your home when we can make that happen, God willing, soon. So you saw the video and you heard from Sam about small communities and why Jewish National Fund is really focusing a lot of energy and attention in communities, such as Richmond and the hundreds of communities like yours around the country. What I thought I would do is tell you a story today, tell you a story of Jewish National Fund, because I think the story has gotten lost over time. And I think the title of this program, right, Beyond Trees, More Than Trees, is apropos, because for many decades now, fortunately and unfortunately, JNF has become synonymous with trees, which is a very small part of who we are as an organization. We're now on the dawn of 120 years of Jewish National Fund. And it was at this very moment, this is the scene from the 5th Zionist Congress in 1901, December of 1901 in Basel, Switzerland. And here is Theodor Herzl himself at the podium giving the address to implore the delegates to finally vote for the Jewish people to return to their homeland. And by name, at this moment, they created a Jewish National Fund. By name, Jewish National Fund. A fund of the Jewish people to raise money globally for the repurchase of our land in Eretz Israel, for the redemption of our land in Eretz Israel. Because let's face it, for generations upon generations, our historical claims to that land, our biblical claims to that land fell on deaf ears. The archaeological fact of our being on that land fell on deaf ears. The fact that Jews had always lived in Israel, even after all of the migration of the Jewish people, there had always been a Jewish footprint, fell on deaf ears. The fact that Jerusalem has only been the capital of one people, one nation, fell on deaf ears. And so in December of 1901, they said, we're going to do this in a different way. We're going to do this through legal means. And we're going to repurchase our land from whomever would sell it to us. So we're going to raise money and we're going to purchase land. And by the way, that was the foundation of that little blue box. Because even back then we knew we'd have to run a major gifts campaign, right? Even back then we knew, for every dollar or shekel or franc or Deutschmark or lira that Jews from all over the globe could put into a can, we're going to need people like Rothschild to write big checks. But this was a mission of our entire people. So in 1901, we were born and we started raising money and we started purchasing land. The first land purchase was made in 1903. If you go to Hadassah Hospital in Karam, one of our very first land purchases is the very land that Hadassah Hospital sits on, the land that Hebrew University sits on. And that was the foundation. Trees came much later. Now, I'm showing you these maps because these maps tell the story. On the far left, and if you can see my cursor, on the far left, this is the actual map of the land purchases of Jewish National Fund. As I mentioned, the first purchase was made in 1903. And this is the map of our purchase. We were buying land from whomever would sell it to us. Dunam by dunam, a plot here, a house there, an empty garden there, agricultural acreage here. We were just buying land. By the way, back then there were no borders, right? Transjordan and Syria and Lebanon, all of these, the borders didn't exist like we know them to exist today. Right? We know that after World War I, the French and the British carved up land. You control, Jordan, England, you control Syria, France and so forth and so on. But there were no borders. We were buying land from whoever would sell it to us. And why am I telling you this story? Because finally, in 1947, and I'm fast forwarding through lots of other history, but 1947, after the Shoah, the Holocaust, the United Nations voted on what was called a partition plan, right? Land for the Jews and land for the Arabs. And what was the foundation for that decision? Because as much as the Shoah, the Holocaust, was an emotional appeal to the world for the Jews to have a homeland, the legal mechanism for the United Nations to make that happen was based on land ownership. I turn your attention to the middle map. This middle map is the actual map of the partition plan. And what do you see here? Look at the shape of the land purchases of Jewish National Fund. Look at the shape of the land bequeathed to the Jewish National Fund from the United Nations in the partition plan. They match. Had we been able to purchase more land, the state of Israel, as it was endowed in 1947, would look a little bit different. This is before the War of Independence in 1948. If we bought less, would have looked different. So as much as, and it's not hyperbole to say, the Israel that we know today, the state of Israel as it exists today, does not exist without Jewish National Fund. And that's a historical fact, not hyperbole. And we have the deed to the land. And when people question our land ownership, that we stole land, we know. Even further, 1901, who controlled Palestine at that point? It was the Ottoman Turks. It was Muslim courts who were adjudicating land purchases. And this really tells the story of the modern state of Israel today, from the land purchases that your grandparents and your grandparents made when they were putting a penny in the pushka, when they were buying those stamps. Many of you may remember those stamps that you could purchase back in the day. It was for this. Now I'm going to give you a little hint. So why did we start planting trees? You can win money at the bar with this. You're going to win. You can win drinks with this information. I don't know, maybe in a yeshiva or something. I don't know. But here, this is cool. We started buying land from whomever would sell it to us. Ottoman Turkish laws allowed for squatter rights. In other words, you have land that you don't develop, and a squatter pitches a tent, builds a structure, starts cultivating the land. After 7 years, they could make a claim in Turkish courts that the land was abdicated. Since they cultivated it, they should have the land. That's why Jewish National Fund started planting trees. We started buying land and then planting, buying and planting. Those trees that we started planting, again, back in 1903, were the first Jewish army back in our land in 2,000 years, literally and physically putting our roots back into the soil of our land. And when we did that, it showed land ownership. This is owned, and it was security for the Jewish people. Now that's a great story. That's a great story, from the land purchases starting in 1903 to 1947 and the UN partition plan. But here's the rub, advancing to today. Now, I've got 2 boys who are in their early 20s. So like many of your kids, they've grown up with Israel as a fact, right? Israel's a fact. Israel is a strong nation. Israel's a powerful nation. Israel's got a good economy. Israel's got a strong army, great universities, right? They win medals at the Olympics now. We got a baseball team that beat Cuba in the World Baseball Classic, right? And we're talking about our kids. So what's in it for them? I'm 55 years old. So I was born in 1965. And I say that because I have no memory of the 6-Day War. No memory. I have the most vague memory of 1973 Yom Kippur War. I actually have a memory of being in my grandparents' home, and Walter Cronkite was on the television, and they were talking about the Yom Kippur War, and I think they were talking about the US finally ending the blockade, right, of sending arms. And I share that because I'm 55 years old, and I have very little memory of the redemption of the state of Israel. Because for our grandparents, some of our parents, great-grandparents certainly, you know, when they were donating to organizations like Jewish National Fund, it was life and death. It was the longing for the homeland, right? It was that aspirational, you know, thought process. Now, it's a fact. I turn your attention to the last slide here, because as much as we've built the success story of Israel is built on 25% of the land. I would imagine most of you have been to Israel. And what you know is that most of the population lives between Haifa, Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem. It's where all the action is. The Negev, which represents 60% of the landmass, is sparsely populated. The Negev here. The Galilee sparsely populated. And we have a situation today with Israelis living on top of each other. The typical Israeli has a tough time making a go of it economically. Israelis are no different than us. What do we all want? We want the best for our children, right? We want our children to have even a better life than we have. We want to have our children have the advantages and have no boundaries. Israelis are no different. You have a situation where a typical Israeli can't afford to buy a home in the center of the country. They're not getting married until much later. We all know Israelis who live in the States. You ask any Israeli that you know why they left Israel, I promise you, almost to the person, they will never say security issues. Because as much as economically Israel's a tough place to live, if you look at other metrics that are done by international organizations, it's listed as one of the top places to raise a child, very good healthcare, good educational systems, all that stuff. The quality of life generally is okay, except for the cost factor, but it's almost never a security issue. And this is the problem that we face today. And this is everything that Jewish National Fund is about today. I mean, these are some facts. I just, pulled some of these. These are different times pulled from the headlines of the paper. It's a big issue. And this is fascinating just for this particular parlor meeting today. So I had this slide in here from The Economist, the middle slide here, and this is from 3 years ago. So I went back and just, I think on Thursday, found another headline, and this is from November. The Economist, in 2017, Tel Aviv was number 11, 11th most expensive city in the world, 3 years ago. There is an achievement. We went up to number 5. I just pulled this slide a few days ago. So where's the victory there? And in another context, if you think about all of the work that we've done to create this wonderful homeland, this viable state, this strong nation, it's built on a house of cards very much. Because if people are leaving, as much as they're coming in, and we know people are making aliyah, but if they're leaving, where's the victory for the Jewish people? In another way, think about it this way. As much as we know that anti-Semitism is on the rise globally, and we have to acknowledge that it indeed is, as much as that is a fact, on the other hand, this is very much the golden age of being Jewish. For the first time, and get your arms around what I'm about to say, it's true. For the first time in the history of the Jewish people, we can pretty much live wherever the heck we want to live. We can live wherever we choose to live. It's a fact. If you can show, ancestry to Spain, you can get a passport now. They want their Jews back. Sorry about that whole Inquisition thing. Portugal, Spain. We want you to come back. Putin wants the Jews to come back to Russia. I mean, pretty much we can live wherever we want to live. So here's the headline there. If those are the conditions, Israel must represent for us a want to, not a have to. A want to, not a have to. Yes, anti-Semitism is really on the rise in England and London. We know what's happening in Paris and throughout France, of course. But Jews aren't going away from Paris or London unless they choose to go away. Israel has to be a want to, back to the point of longing. And this is who Jewish National Fund is today. I told you the story starting in 1901. We bought land, we built the land, we helped to create the conditions to make it a historical fact. That was then. The question is, who are we now? Why do we need you to join us in this mission? Because the job is not done. We need to finish the deal that our parents and our grandparents started. And I see the Brownsteins on my screen and your daughter, who is in Israel right now at Alexander High School in Israel. This is her mission. We need to finish the job. Until we can build the Negev and the Galilee so people can have even a better quality of life than they may have in the center of the country, when people don't have to live on top of each other, but they have options, when we can do what Ben Gurion always said we needed to do to really create a strong state of Israel, until we can do that, this job is not done. The mission of Jewish National Fund, and we saw that video, we're going to show you another slide with our action areas. It's a lot. We're doing a lot. We're involved in hundreds and hundreds of projects throughout the state. It's a lot. I'm not going to overload you. If you only remember this and share this with your friends, this is who Jewish National Fund is today. Our mission is to affect 300,000 more Israelis living in the north and 500,000 more Israelis living in the south. That's who we are today. And the projects that we undertake are all focused on this. When we look to invest $1 million here, $150,000 there, the litmus test for us is, how does it impact either growth or retention of population? That's the litmus test for the projects that we do today. It's all about growth. We do very little in the center of the country. We have partners that are working in the center of the country for sure. But the building projects of Jewish National Fund, which is our identity, building the land of Israel, the action is all in the north and the south. This is a little slice of what we do. We're involved in water solutions. I remind you, this goes back 20 years. And it was Ronald Lauder, who was our president at the time, that was beating the drum for Israel to wake up and deal with the water crisis. And that was a real victory for us, because Israeli politicians didn't want to hear about water. They would rather farmers plow over their fields. And it was Jewish National Fund and our president who said, you got to take a look at this. And yes, we knew that desalination was the long-term answer. And even then, Israel was a world leader in desalination technology, but they're exporting all of the technology and the know-how abroad because the cost to the consumer of desalinated water was too high. Jewish National Fund, they had a low-cost solution. We started building water reservoirs throughout the country, because every drop of rain is precious, every drop of water is precious. We built water reservoirs, 240 reservoirs at this point throughout the country, which farmers use. And a lot of farmers who are off the grid can still farm today. We solved the water crisis in many respects. I don't want to say that too much, because water is always going to be an issue, especially in the Middle East. But Israel is actually now an exporter of water. We've got a deal with Jordan that was signed in the 1994 peace treaty with Jordan. Israel actually exports water to Jordan. It's a means of victory. Forestry and green innovations. When we started planting trees, and the first tree plantings were in 1903, as I mentioned, it was basically for security. We didn't have a concept of ecology at the turn of the 20th century as we do today, right? I mean, even in the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency was actually created under Richard Nixon's regime. People don't even think about that. He's a bit of a greenie. People don't see Nixon as a greenie, but it wasn't until the 1970s that the EPA was formed here. But here we are planting trees, 240 million trees later. Israel is the only nation on earth that started the 21st century with more trees than it began in the 20th century. Over a 100-year span, Israel was the only country on earth with a net increase in trees. That's cool stuff. Actually lowered the overall temperature in Israel by 2 degrees. Lowered the temperature by 2 degrees. I mean, when it's 118, okay, so it's not 120. And heritage sites throughout Israel, all of these sites that tell the story of Israel, whether it be the Atlit detention camp in near Akko, where during the British Mandate, Jews coming, you heard the story Exodus, right? Paul Newman, great Jewish character, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Paul Newman. But Atlit, when Exodus came to the shores and the British arrested them for coming back home, They put them in detention camps like Atlit, and we've preserved it for tourism and for education to tell a story. If you've been to, we call the Bullet Factory, otherwise known as the Ayalon Institute, where we had an underground bullet factory during the War of Independence, making bullets. All of this is part of Jewish National Fund to tell the story. And the Alexander Musk kids are seeing some of these places while they're there. Disabilities and special needs has become a major focus of this organization. Because at the end of the day, what is Jewish National Fund all about? Quality of life, right? The best quality of life for all Israelis and making sure that nobody is left behind. And we're involved in a whole network of affiliates that are providing services and support for people with disabilities, and R&D, which started with agriculture and water. This is Jewish National Fund being a light unto the nations. Because much of the research and development that we're doing, for example, in arid land agriculture, this is technology just being exported around the globe to places in Southeast Asia and to Africa. Many places don't even have diplomatic relationships with Israel, are happy to take our know-how and learn from us. And community building, community building, community building. This is what I've been talking about. And of course, education and advocacy. It's not enough. It's not enough that we just build. But we're not just building land, we're building land for people, for our people. And it's important that we tell this story because we had not told the story for a very long time. And so, yes, we connect even today. You remember when you were in school and getting the pushki, the blue box when you were in school, and we still do that. We actually send out during Tu B'Shvat about 150,000 blue boxes to schools and synagogues around the country. And so we connect with kids that are very young, and we get to them in high school through Alexander Musk, and we connect with them in college through many programs that we're doing on college campuses. And then when they are young professionals, we engage them in our JNF Future program. All of that is, what is that all about? It's about the 10%, as I like to say. You know, as a people, we're always going to have those who don't want to connect with the community. We're always going to have those who turn away from the community. That's a fact. But who are a people, and what's a body without a head? A body without a head is like a people without leaders. And the education advocacy piece of Jewish National Fund is all about perpetuating us as a people for the next generation. That we can identify the 10%, like you. You're giving up time on your Sunday morning to listen to me blab, for 20 minutes. You care. Sadly, that places you in about the upper 10% of our people. But we need to always identify the next 10% of our people. We are an organization of vision, and we do big things, and we make strategic decisions. Now, this is not going to seem like Jewish National Fund to you, but do you know that in all of Israel, there is no culinary institute? Now, Israel's become a very foodie kind of nation, very foodie. And it used to be, the Israel of, falafel and shawarma. Now they have embraced some 60 different cultures that meld in Israel, some amazing restaurants with amazing chefs, almost all of whom have been trained abroad. Right now, as we speak, Jewish National Fund is building a $30 million Galilee Culinary Institute up where the Brownstein's daughter is right now, near the border with Lebanon, near Kiryat Shmona, all the way up on the border. And why are we building it? Why are we building it there? Number one, what's our mission? Build the Galilee, build the Negev, pull up. We're developing a campus there right now, because if we build this, entrepreneurs are going to build around it. This is also going to be very unique. That's a 4-year program, and kids are going to be matriculated through Tel Chai College. It's going to teach everything, not just culinary skills, but the front of the house, the back of the house, business operations, and even more, leveraging our work in research and development. About 5 miles down the road, we are building a culinary tech center. And it's going to be a campus where businesses, companies can test market products to bring out to the world in food tech. But this is going to be a big project. The biggest project that Jewish National Fund in the history of our organization for 100 years. We just announced it formally at a Zoom kickoff a couple of weeks ago. We are doing a $350 million campaign for the Jewish National Fund Israel Education Technology Campus in Beersheba. If you haven't been to Beersheba in the last 10 years, you've got to go, because Beersheba really is a Jewish National Fund story. Blueprint Negev, which was our plan to build the Negev, main focus was to create a real hub. What's cool to a kid in Tel Aviv to say, hey, move to the Negev? You're in Tel Aviv, it's a cool city. We wanted to build up Beersheba to be the true capital of the world. And Beersheba is now one of the fastest growing cities in all of Israel. It's become a real tech center. Our Alexander Muss High School in Israel is busting at the seams. We get about 2,000 kids a year during normal times coming through all the different sessions at Alexander Muss. We want to build it to 5,000 kids a year, not just from the United States. We have kids from Australia that are coming. We have kids from Canada that are coming. We want to build Alexander Muss to 5,000. So number one, this campus will be a second home, a second campus for Alexander Muss. We're going to have a campus in the center near Tel Aviv and Hod Sharon, the existing campus, a second campus in Beersheba. Secondly, we want to leverage all of these smart kids that we're producing who can't get internships with companies like Facebook and Google and Intel and Microsoft because they're competing globally. I'll tell you that today, and we've actually done mapping of companies in Israel, Microsoft Israel, Intel Israel, Facebook Israel, Google Israel, they're dying for American kids. They want American kids. We're building a home for those kids who are young adults who are coming to Israel for high-tech internships to be able to live together on this campus. Why would Jewish National Fund do that? I just told you about the 10%. If we engage these smart kids when they're in their late teens and early 20s, and they can be part of the Jaina family, we can start developing them for future leadership. And then the other piece of this campus is to be, and this is the big vision, a home for all streams of Judaism to come together to learn together. We're creating an education conferencing space. So companies and organizations, educational institutions can come and teach and have seminars and have conferences and have programming, all streams together. And we know that that's unique because that's not happening anywhere in the world. And can you imagine the reform movement hosting a conference in the same place that the Orthodox Union is hosting a conference? We know that we can do it. And this is our big vision project today, just getting off the ground. We've just actually started fundraising. We've raised about $12 million so far. Big naming opportunities here. But I wanted to show you this as part of our vision. And again, why in Beersheba? If we build it, they will come. And we want Beersheba to be a focal point for the country. So I mentioned Alexander Muss High School in Israel, and I've got a bit of a surprise for the Brownsteins.
Alex Brownstein, how has this experience impacted you?
This experience has been amazing, and I'm more than grateful that my parents have sent me here. It's taught me how to be part of a community and a leader within a community, and to deal with roommates and how to live in a room with a lot of people and just living alone and having the responsibility of being alone. So I'm really thankful for that.
What has it been like being in Israel during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, it's been a little bit crazy. We've had some trips canceled, and our school has really adapted to the situation, and they've made the best out of it, and I've had the most amazing experience. It's really interesting to have a global view on how other countries are dealing and other governments are dealing with the pandemic, unlike the United States, like comparing the two. So that's been really interesting.
What has the highlight of your program been?
The highlight of my program so far was Yom Kippur night, and it's unlike anything in the United States. And on Yom Kippur, everybody walks to shul or walks home from shul, and we actually went out right after services on Kol Nidre, and We went out to the middle of the city where it's usually bustling with energy and lots of people, stores are open, everything's open, and we sat in the middle of the street and not a single car came. It was pure silence, just kids running around, riding their bikes and having an amazing time with their families, and it was really, really meaningful.
Would you recommend AMHSI to your friends?
I would absolutely recommend AMHSI to my friends. Best experience I've ever had.
Tell us about some of the sites you have been to.
Some of the sites I've been to, I absolutely love the hotel. Masada was amazing. The hike up was at 2:30 a.m., but it was 100% worth it. Bar Kokhba's caves, those were so fun. We had to crawl through, and they were like this small. Really thought I wasn't gonna fit through, but it was so fun. And just the old city is my absolute favorite. It's been an amazing experience.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, she couldn't be on live. So we thought this was the next best thing. But that's what we're doing this for. We're doing this for Alex. This is what Jewish National Fund is all about, from generation to generation, Ledor Vador. I'm ending my talk. We can open up for any questions you have with this slide. These dots show the work of Jewish National Fund throughout the state. There literally isn't a kilometer you can drive without seeing a sign by the roadside of one of JNF's projects. And yes, we are doing hundreds of projects simultaneously. But understand this, with a focus, with a strategic vision to build the land for the next generation. Our job is not done. We applaud our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents who came before us, who started this, who now, because of their efforts, we have a strong state. If we turn our backs, we're turning our backs on everything that they created, and it's up to us to finish this job. It's not done. Again, Rebecca, David, thank you for virtually opening up your home to us today. I look forward to sharing those mimosas with you, God willing, soon. And Sam, I'll turn it back over to you. I know that you wanted to open up for Q&A.
Yes, please, questions.
That was amazing to see Alexandra twice. That was awesome.
Thank you
Yes.
for the video. She was on the Zoom for a few minutes. I don't know if everybody saw her, but she was hungry. She had dinner. They're on a kibbutz tonight somewhere, as you said, Rick, up near the Lebanese border. She sent us a bunch of pictures and videos from today when they were literally up by the security fence. So that was really interesting. And, well, obviously she has had an amazing time, and we can't, thank the JNF enough for their support of AMHSI. And just like Alexander said, we would certainly support any kid who wanted to try and go. It's a great opportunity, whether it's a summer program or a full semester program or a mini-mester. All the different things are all, great. And, they had a tough time in the spring, as we all did. They had to send their kids home, but they worked really hard all summer to get themselves together and get ready. It really was crazy. She didn't express this very much, but they had to literally quarantine in their rooms, for 2 weeks when they got there. And they even had to go so far, they had little, I don't know how to describe this. If you've ever seen like a greenhouse with the plastic sheeting, so they created little bubbles for all of them. So their quarantine group could go to class. They all had to sit in their little greenhouse plastic sheeted bubble. Teacher was in between all of them.
The teacher, the school did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, and then they had, lockdown after that around the high holidays. So they really had to adapt, and the school did a great job of being able to make it still a meaningful experience. We barely heard her say one negative thing about the pandemic being, affecting what they were doing. So, that's very impressive.
We have a nephew who went 2 years ago and was at Hod HaSharon. I said that correctly. But he's in a large community in Philadelphia, so might not see him much around here, but he had an amazing time. Learned a lot. But Rick, we had one question about where can we go on the website or online to learn more about research and development projects, like in addition to what you told us about today?
Yeah. So first of all, on our website itself, if you go to our work, you can navigate down. There's a drop down. You can see all the different action areas. In addition to that, we'll be happy to send you directly some more information through Sam.
Good, thanks.
Thank you for that.
Missions plan for next year.
Anybody else? Comments, observations?
David,
Well,
did you have a question?
This is Nathan Shore. I just wanted to thank you guys for putting this together, and for Rebecca and David for hosting it. It's certainly a lot of interesting things that JNF is doing now, kind of out of what we all remember them doing. So keep up the investment in Israel and the kids.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan. Glad you guys could join in this morning.
See, Hilton, you unmuted. Did you have a question or a comment?
No, actually, I probably I have a question. I don't want to bring it out in a public forum, so I don't know if there's somebody to call after the show, so a contact person for the local area.
That would be me.
That would
So
be you?
I will definitely get in touch with you.
All right,
Absolutely.
so yeah, or if you want to just post some contact information on the chat side, so everybody can get hold of you.
Sure. And we've got a slide for that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, let me share one more time.
Okay.
Well, I do want to mention that we are asking everybody who has an inclination to join the team, you please partner with us. And I put the link in the chat box. It's also really clear, jnf.org, donate Richmond. And you can designate, if you want to designate to education advocacy and Alexander Mush, you can do that. If you want to designate specifically to forestry or research and development, you can do that too. If you want more information on the specific projects like Rebecca asked, I would be happy to walk you through what opportunities there are for specific projects. We've got a ton of information online. And if you have a specific expertise in an area, and I know like Ephraim and I have had conversations about his specific expertise areas, then we would like you to loan your expertise to us. So we are a lay-driven organization, and we need people with solid skills to come alongside us as well. So thank you very much for your consideration on that.
Sam?
Yes.
Just, I hate to interrupt you.
Please,
I have another question, and I hate for this to be so AMHSI focused, but I am curious, you know, as you can probably imagine, as a boarding school program for a whole semester or even the mini-mesters, they're very expensive programs. And I'm curious what percentage of the kids who go on these programs are receiving scholarship funds, and how much of the JNF money that you're using to support AMHSI is for scholarship?
I can answer the question directly. It's about 75% of the kids who get some scholarship, and it's, as you say, it's a very expensive program. HSI typically runs about a $3 million annual budget deficit that we then need to fundraise to make up for. So $3 million is the deficit on an annual basis.
Right.
Any other questions?
We have a fascinating opportunity coming up next October, God willing, and that is our national conference in Israel, 2021. We have a tremendous opportunity to meet together in our land and to be on the ground and visit JNF projects in action. And so you can learn up close and personal from our affiliates who are working on the ground day to day what is going on and get a better understanding of the organization as a whole, as well as our particular projects going on in the land. We got, are we doing the special flight again? Yeah, we're actually going to get everybody on a plane and go from Jerusalem down to Eilat. That's going to be a fantastic experience. And we have some pre-trips arranged and some post trips. And we, as with everybody else, we have a very generous cancellation policy. if unfortunately we're not able to make it. So I would encourage you to go take a look at the national conference and consider joining us in the fall after Holy Days. And yes, I will be in touch with each of you. In my contact information, I'm your local JNF professional. And while I do cover only about 49 states, I happen to live just an hour from you in Virginia. So it's even better. Please do reach out to me. Each of you will be receiving an email from me anyway, but you're welcome to call me first if that works better for you. Not a problem at all. And so with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Rebecca.
Am I muted? Yes. All right. Thank you, Sam. It went by fast this hour. I learned, I can't believe it. I learned more than I expected to. Thank you very much, Rick. There's a lot of good information. Without JNF, there is no Israel, actually, from that background information on how things started. Our next step, and we've referred to this already a few times, is to hope to get together in person, maybe in a few months. No, hopefully within maybe soon. We'd like to invite all of you to our home, even if you don't live in the Richmond area or the Charlottesville, Central Virginia area. You're still welcome. We'll see how that goes. And if we can't get together, we should definitely do this again, I think, do another virtual gathering. Again, also if we can get together in one place, we'll also stream it called the hybrid version for anybody who is not local or doesn't want to travel out into the woods of Goochland County, or if there's still any concern about COVID, we'll do both. Please feel free to be in touch with David or me, or Melissa and Andy. They know a lot now also, maybe more than most, particularly about the opportunities for young people. And if you have any questions, wish to get involved, wish to make a donation, certainly be in touch with Sam, and we hope to get together again and see us all this way again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Very much. Thank you
week.
very much, Rick, for your time this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes,
for
this
the
was
time.
terrific. We'll see
Thank
you
you,
all
everyone.
again sometime soon. Thanks, Adam. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
By
And
the
you
way,
guys, the
everyone, I'm
Bentleys,
the
will be in
Washington
touch.
area, so I'm, nearby too.
Yes.
So,
Oh, good.
yeah.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Melissa, tell Alexandra we said hello.
Will do.
And thank you. Tell her thank you for taking her time out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.